this wonderful, unfortunately postponed event. But you got to admit, even though it's raining, the weather's a lot nicer than it was that day when we first scheduled it. Which up here was a blizzard, so it was a good one. I was asked to say a few things because I've been involved. Oh, I should say I'm Gary Green, and I'm a professor of art at Colby College. And I want to welcome everybody for coming, and this is a really nice crowd, so thanks for turning out. End of the semester, last week of classes. So, okay, and so I was asked, I worked on the show a little bit with Tod and Megan, and especially on the catalog, and I want to tell you just a little bit about what's so great about Esopus and also why I'm so passionate about it. So I've always been interested in printing, and my father was a printer. He used to bring home, type and things, little things like that kids you just examine. And as a kid, it was always sort of creative and, I don't know, in my own head, when I was spending a lot of time alone, I said, I loved those things. I would try to print them. I got a little printing set. I mean, I was a wannabe printer, is what I was. And, but in the meantime, I became a photographer, and it's a good combination. It's a really good combination. So I see photo books as probably the best way to show photography in many, many ways. I mean, I love exhibits, of course, and prints. They're beautiful, but books show you a complete world. And Esopus shows you a complete world in each issue. It's just, books are different. You can own them for a reasonable price. You can hold them, you can go back and forth, and you can look at them almost any time you like to look at them, and often as many times. And so I'll never get tired of analog books. I don't read ebooks. I don't want to. It's fine. I like to read them, but I like the smell of ink on paper and the feel of the paper and the typeface and anything else I can get out of it. So yeah, I got into photo books, and photo books then became a really big thing. In the last 10 years, the photo book world has exploded, and I'm thrilled about it. It's a great opportunity. A lot of people are printing archives that haven't been printed and so forth. So I first saw Esopus a long time ago, and I did live in the Hudson Valley, but for 10 years, but I saw Esopus afterwards, and I thought, Esopus, that's that creek in Ulster County, and we have tubed down the creek. I have an essay if you read that in tons. Get the catalog if you can. Talk about a good deal. It's amazing. It's an amazing, rich catalog. That is a catalog of the archive. Essentially, it's a project in itself, but it does explain a lot of what Tod and Chris have done together as artist and printer. And so I saw Esopus. I couldn't figure out the connection to the creek until I met Tod, and I thought maybe here's a guy who's probably from New York, and he has a second house in somewhere around there, because we do a lot of people who live there. It's a beautiful part of the Catskills. And but I didn't know him, and I was intimidated. I didn't try to make that connection, but at that point. But when his archive came here, thanks to Larice Paul, particularly, who's here tonight, and we're so happy to see again, we've got his archive. And that was like, wow, it was like, to me, it was I thought, wow, we got this whole archive. This is something to look forward to. It must be amazing. And it is. And I won't talk about that, but it is. I mean, this is an archive of both, it's printed work, but it's also artist work at a small scale. It's very much two-dimensional, but there's some three-dimensional projects, pop-ups, and as I say, cutouts, and all sorts of things to do. It's like a kid's book for adults who like art, in a way. It's like so tactile, it's so creative and imaginative. It's an archive of archives. You see the original objects printed so well that they look like the object. You kind of have to almost try to separate it. So the magazine was amazing, and we got the archive, and when I met Tod, I was like, oh my God, this guy's so nice, so energetic, and so creative. And I didn't know Tod was also a visual artist, that Tod is a musical artist. He's an amazing designer, publisher, editor, so what can I say? Those are your accolades. It's true, and so it's been a thrill to work with him and Megan, and now to meet Chris, who is the printer who has to deal with this, which is like, wow, this is a job, and I would think each time was a new. It wasn't like a job that you learned; it was different each time. So, Chris is going to talk about how that became a reality, and I guess in a sense how artists work with printers. We go out into a different world. I personally, Chris asked me if I've ever been on press. I have, and I love it. I love working with pressmen. They are, well, the ones I've worked with have been so kind, and they're so good at their jobs. And they translate, what you're thinking. It's like, a little that, and a little that there, and they move these things. The presses are amazing now, and precise, and to see the thing come to life on these sheets, and then cut and folded and put together it's miraculous. And this, in 2024, to see books, nice books of art still being printed is pretty miraculous. So I'll leave it there, and to say, I want to welcome Chris, and Tod, and Megan, and welcome you all to this amazing conversation that I am also looking forward to. Thank you, Tod, for the opportunity to work with you on this. It's been terrific. So thanks. Thanks for coming all this way. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Gary. And I should note that we also work with Gianluca Rizzo as a faculty advisor who's not able to be here today, but was also instrumental. You didn't forget, it's okay.
I remember.
He's not here. So we have prepared a few slides as kind of prompts for discussion, but as I know from working with Tod and having just recently met Chris, but we can talk. So I have a feeling we'll go off script a little bit, or if there even is one. I thought that perhaps you could each introduce yourselves just a little bit, and I can just start by saying I'm the Barbara Alfond Director of Exhibitions and Publications here at the museum. I was really fortunate to work with Tod as a co-curator on Esopus. Obviously my love of publications and exhibitions, this was a dream come true. And I'm also from Waterville, so I know there's a little hometown pride right now with some familiar faces in the crowd. So thank you all for coming out, and maybe to Chris, you can end.
Sure, thanks Megan. My name's Chris Young, and I'm from Winnipeg, Manitoba. I've worked with Tod since March of 2003.
Yep.
And over the course of those 21 years, I've been with a couple of different printing companies, and Tod has stuck with us the whole time. We printed every single issue that you'll see in that gallery, so it's been a tremendous honor to have worked with you these many years now.
Well, it's been a pleasure. I'm Tod Lippy, I'm the editor of Esopus. I'm thrilled to have this archive at Colby. I'm incredibly excited about this show. I'm grateful to you, Megan, and everybody else here for making this possible. And I wanted to just quickly call out Maurice Hall again, who's here. There she is. Maurice Hall was director of libraries at Colby and made I think kind of a courageous decision to acquire this archive in 2019, which was an incredibly wonderful thing for us and for the Esopus Foundation, and I think the vision that it required to make that decision is kind of extraordinary and worth lauding here again. And all of us are incredibly grateful to you, Maurice, for getting this to Colby, so thank you.
Hopefully you all have a little bit to go into the galleries if you haven't yet this evening. After the talk, it'll be open for a little bit longer. And of course, the show closes on May 12th, this Sunday. So if you don't get a chance this evening, rush back. Just a few photos, as if you can't go in the gallery and see it, but just to see really that there's a lot more inside. And also you can take a nap after if you need to. So I just wanted to start by Tod, if you can tell us a little bit about kind of the beginnings of Esopus. We now know a little how the archive got here, but maybe the beginnings of Esopus, the beginnings of your relationship with Chris, and yeah.
Sure. So I started Esopus in 2003, and I'd done other magazines, and I'd done other kinds of creative stuff, and I was kind of spinning my wheels a bit after being involved with 2 other publications. And my partner, who's here tonight, David, said, "You need to do another magazine." I'm like, well, maybe I do. But I didn't want to do just another magazine. I wanted to do something that was commercial free, that had no advertising, that was affordable, that felt accessible, that was multidisciplinary, so there wasn't just an art magazine or a design magazine or a film magazine, but had a little bit of everything. And I really wanted to make it feel like a box of things, not just a magazine with reproductions of objects and items and writing. So that's how it kind of got started. And I had to look for a printer, obviously, for the first issue, and I was kind of clueless about offset printing at that point. And I got a recommendation from a friend for 2 printers, one in Iceland named Odie, and one in Winnipeg named West Can Printing, which is where Chris was when I met him. And I mean, it was immediately clear that there was a real rapport with Chris, and he was always a delight to deal with. He was very patient with me in my relatively ignorant state early on in this whole process. And I mean, the first issue had its challenges, and you kind of shepherded me through them. I really knew almost nothing about, I mean, all the things we'll be talking about to a certain degree tonight, forms and how they folded together and how I'd have to sequence things properly so inserts would fit between forms. I mean, I had no idea.
It was very ambitious, issue 1.
Yes, it was.
We printed a lot of art magazines and catalogs and books, but we'd never seen anything like Esopus until 2003. So we had some experience, but honestly, it made us a better printer since that day.
I think it's miraculous, Tod, that you went on press pretty much every time, which is,
Every time.
I'll preface this a little bit. I should have noted this at the beginning, but this discussion, obviously Chris is the printer and Tod and I is a lot about the making of the magazine, literally the production of it. So we're all print geeks up here, so we'll use a little bit of language that we'll try to explain. But going on press, for one, I heard Gary mention it, but literally going on press is going to the printer to be there while the publication is printing. And this slide actually is, as you can see, Todd's probably already taken a million photos of you, but he takes a lot of photos when he goes places. And generally at a press check, they always have this very sweet sign at the start.
It's really nice to walk into a place, especially, I mean, it's always a little nerve-wracking, but at the beginning it was particularly nerve-wracking because I really didn't know what to expect, and I felt there was so much responsibility on my part to make sure that I shepherded this through, you know, the proper way, and that everything looked good, and that the artist would be happy, and the reproductions would be, you know, faithful. But I learned very quickly that when you go on press, you kind of, it's kind of like getting on a plane. You just kind of have to give up control, and you have to let the experts who got their pilot's license or their printers, you know, knowledge kind of handle it, and it's really nice. Even though it's still stressful, and there are always issues, there are always problems, but it's very nice to know that you're, like, the bulk of your heavy lifting is done, and now it's just a question of, you know, shepherding it through in a way that where you're doing very little work, you're just kind of watching other people do amazing things.
You know, and speaking of coming on press, to get to Winnipeg is no small feat.
Yeah, it's true.
You know, there's only one other client that's been to our shop more than Tod, and he's here tonight. His name's Jason Brown from Robin's Quarterly.
Yeah. And you've been ice fishing, and I haven't.
How many trips have you made to Winnipeg?
I think there were 25 issues of every issue, and then there was a couple of, well, the book Modern Artifacts was during COVID, so I had a flight that's going to cancel it. I think it's, I think like 27.
Sounds great.
There's no direct flight.
There is no direct flight. No, you have to fly.
This image is of Tod, presumably as the first. This is issue 1, so this is 21 years ago.
Yeah.
a lot of happiness and optimism and excitement about having that cover printed there. So we can talk a lot more. I would say I asked these guys a little bit, as a framework for discussion today, could you pick a couple favorite projects that we could walk through? And that was soon, one of those, how do you pick a favorite? They're all favorites. But there were a few that rose to the surface, and you'll see them kind of interspersed throughout. But mostly they were around really challenging projects, which I thought was interesting. So it was more about the things that were challenging to produce and really satisfying, I think, in the end, with a lot of creative thinking that went into it. So I wonder if you both could talk a little bit about the Barenstrik project.
So this was a project by the Dutch artist Barenstrik. He's a contemporary artist that uses thread a lot in his canvases, his larger works. And I'd asked him to do a project, and he came up with this image of a horse, and he decided he wanted to, ideally, hand sew this beautiful silver thread that we sourced on each of these. And we had, at that point, I think, circulation of like 8,000 copies, which we couldn't do it, it's too much. But we did do it for our subscribers, which was like 2,000 people, and that was kind of almost doable, but it was going to be a very challenging project. And Carrie Ann, my administrator, who I hope is here, I think, yay, there she is. Carrie Ann and I tried desperately to come up with, you had to basically, they couldn't hand sew them through this thick stock, so we needed to basically punch the holes.
Tiny little pinholes so that when they fed the needle and thread through, it actually go through without damaging the paper.
Right, and there's Carrie Ann with her screwdriver. And we tried really hard, and this board is actually in the exhibition. It just wasn't precise enough, and whenever we had an issue we could resolve it, I was like, Chris, what can we do? And so,
my dad, who was in the printing industry, was screen printing. He was a real craftsman, and he came up with this little device where him and my mom, and you'll see him in the next slide in the video, they actually pressed the holes into the paper so that the group that we had sewed through could get the needle and thread through nicely. That's in my mom's kitchen.
And
it works.
They called it the Jimmy 3000.
Right. You can see, if you go back, you can see that.
And Tod made these, also for sale. Tod made these hats that are
Limited reproduction.
Yes.
Yeah. Chris, I guess your dad was working these one day, and you, as a joke.
I stopped in at lunch to
Right.
see how they were doing, and I wrote that on a frog tape and stuck it on his hat.
So just an example, I think, of real creative thinking and ingenuity.
And also, I think, it's really unusual for your printer to get his parents involved.
Yeah.
In your magazine.
Is it though?
Is it though? But I should say, we have a really.
My mother-in-law also assembled the William Christian.
That's right. That's right. Yes. Yeah.
It's a family affair.
Well, and I should just say, because it makes me very happy, when we were doing the second issue, I think your wife was pregnant with your first kid, and we had a copy editor named Marley Higa, and you were looking at the proofs.
We just loved
and
it.
Lisa was like, Marley, that's a good name. Your daughter's name is Marley. So nice.
I'll also say that I also get my family very involved in projects here. So my husband built some shelves.
Right,
My
you did all the incredible sections.
dad has been involved. My mom works at the gallery. Anyway, yes, that's how we work here. Maybe you guys can talk a little bit about Nicolene Thomas, which is such an exciting artist and fun to work with.
Yeah, so Nicolene Thomas did a project for Esopus 23. She's an amazing artist based in New York. Very well known at this point, highly respected. And she loves working with, particularly her paintings. She uses flocking and tinsel and mirrors and broken glass. And they're really tactile. And I asked her to do a project, and she decided she'd love to do one. And we met in her studio. We were going through her early mock-ups for it. That's her on the right, with a couple of studio assistants. So we basically put together a list of what could possibly come from all this. And Mickey, who'd never done any printing before, and this happened often with artists that I was working with, kind of had these really ambitious ideas for what we could do. Like we could do glitter, glue it on one page, and we could hand cut, and put strips of cloth on another page. And again, this is a classic sort of like, Chris, what do we do here? Because we can't, obviously, we're talking again like thousands of copies. So like it was a long and very fun process saying we can't do glitter, but we can do dry trap varnish, which makes things super shiny, and we can print a texture behind them so it looks like glitter. And we can't like do certain kinds of hand cut things. We can die cut certain pages, as I think in that earlier spread shows it, that will make it feel like these have just been like chopped up with scissors. So it was just a very complicated process that's a perforated insert that comes out on the last page. And again, very difficult to print, not easy to assemble either. Normally on a binder you would just throw a signature on a mechanized binder.
Manually inserted or glued before
Yeah.
it was tipped on before you even published it.
Tipped on, that's a good phrase.
We should have done bingo, like print term bingo.
There we go.
I would say that, this is an example that Esopus was not just reproducing artworks, like you said, but really, truly making artworks, which is one of the really exciting parts about it. We were gonna, as you can tell, we're talking a bit about materials and the tools that are available in this medium. So a little bit more about paper and ink. In the show, you'll see on the tables, a big part of the archive, or literally, physically big part of the archive are press sheets. So this, in the show you'll see on the tables are a selection of press sheets. Maybe, Chris, you could do a better job of describing what a press sheet is. But they're really beautiful pieces on their own, and actually I wanted to do the whole gallery in them. I wanted to wallpaper the gallery with press sheets, and for show number 2, I suppose.
Great.
Yeah. But I hope you guys can take a look at them, and maybe, you could just say what press sheets.
What you're seeing on the screen, that is I think a 25-inch by 38-inch sheet, and each one of those images represents a page in the magazine. So when we print it, we do so in a what's called an imposition, where the pages are sequenced deliberately so that when we go through the press and we print both sides and then we fold it up, they all become sequential. So that's, in a nutshell, what a press sheet is. And for a magazine of Esopus' length, typically they would run 200 plus pages. This particular size, we would print in 16-page sections. So to put that into perspective, that would be 14 sections. So each one would require a make ready on the press, and each one would have to be folded and then collated and bound. So the amount of work that goes into it, not only from the pre-press side, but from the press and the bindery, and just the amount of people that touch a job that goes through our plant is incredible.
Well, there were always we had so many challenges along the way with, here we got paper stock one time that there was some flaw in it.
I think it had a line every second sheet.
Yeah, every like 9th sheet or something, and I have a picture of the press guys, literally one by one, and we're talking thousands of sheets.
But there's so many variables that go into a job.
Yeah.
Not only what happens at our shop, but what happens before it even gets to us. From the designers, the photographers, the illustrators, the artists that put it all together and then send it to us, never mind the color correction.
Right.
And then we get it, and there's so many things that can go wrong. And it's amazing that, not that every job goes perfectly well, but the vast majority, 98% of them go through without a hitch.
Yeah.
And it's a testament to the people and the attention to detail and the processes that are in place.
Yeah. I also
It's magic, actually.
It is
Just
magic. It's when you see it. Most of you familiar with forms and folding down forms and how that works? Because it really is. It is like a magical thing. I always think when I go on press, I would always fold down an entire issue by hand so I could see what it looked like. And every time I folded it forward, I'm like, it's not going to work. It's going to be out of order. Something's going to burst. It always did. But we also did a lot of different kinds of stocks. So in each issue, there are usually 5 or 6 different kinds of paper stocks. So there were uncoated stocks, there were transparent stocks like these, in this James Lee Byers piece. There were shiny stock, there were coated stock. It was
Glow in the dark ink stuff.
yeah,
Daylight
fluorescent,
stuff.
yeah. So
That was the Jenny Holzer
Yep.
series of documents.
Yeah.
I wonder actually, because the Marilyn Minter we have the press sheet in the show, but isn't represented otherwise. And I was hoping you could talk a little bit about this particular project, but also maybe what it was like to work with artists and your process, I'm always curious, like, how did you get people to get into Esopus? And you can actually learn a lot about it in the show. It's pure tenacity on Todd's part, but I try to learn all the time from you. Yeah.
Well, Marilyn Minter, the great thing about doing a magazine is you can kind of be a semi-stalker. You have an excuse to meet people you really admire and think are amazing. So you can always say, hey, I'm doing a magazine. Would you like to do a project? And more often than not, it worked out. Not always, but Marilyn, I loved her work for many, many, many years, and she had been starting work of this series of almost abstract images, often with like spray cans spraying against like a glass surface or water, beaded water. And she wanted to do something for the magazine, which was great. She wanted to use metallic paper, which we were able to get. We used special ink. We had a transparent sheet that was put in front of one of the images so that it was kind of a layered, very incredibly cool, beautiful image. And yeah, it was kind of like that last image is she's looking at her originals and I'm telling her what we can do that will get close, but maybe be better in some cases, or more unusual or more interesting. And it was just a question of literally going back and forth with her and then going back and forth with you. I remember
sending samples.
Yeah, and I remember like making a video for her saying, this is what it's gonna look like when you flip it in the light. Is that reflection gonna work for you, et cetera, et cetera. So there's a lot of backs and forths.
Yeah, a lot of process, I think. A lot of trust in the process, which we also did in the making of the exhibition.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, true. Yeah.
We don't have to keep going through individual projects like this. If you want to go out, but
I mean, this is a good one.
prompts.
This is going to talk about because this is a project by Marilyn Carey, a contemporary artist who's based in New York, and she did this project called You and We. And in the project, she took photographs of 8 people, and each photograph was taken straight on, and then with the reverse image, and they were on the front and back sides of each page. And it was a 16-page thing altogether. And while we were printing this, every press operator at all the places, almost every press operator is just amazing and so excited about printing and so excited about sharing their excitement about printing that I said, could you possibly, there's the 4-color process is fascinating to me and I don't quite get it. Can you just run this form with just cyan ink, and then just magenta ink, then with just yellow ink, and then with just black ink, so I can see the different percentages in each one of those color plates. So they did that, and then they started adding colors on the right side. You'll get blue and yellow, and then you'll get magenta and yellow, and then you'll get yellow and magenta and blue. So, and then at the bottom, you get the final 4-color image. But to me, that's like you can't get a better education on 4-color printing than being on press and having a press person happily deliver to you an illustration of how the whole process works.
Yeah, how often, we'll look at some gold ink in a second, but how often did you steer off of 4-color?
We did a whole lot of
metallics.
Yeah.
The images of the sock with the full-on
Oh,
Pantone colors.
Yeah.
Every cover had a Pantone color.
Every color had a Pantone. Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
An image from the printer?
Yeah, I always take pictures when I go on press, and this was just an image of the 6-color think.
No, I think that's her 10 colors.
Excuse me, that's
Oh.
the 10 color glory. But yeah, it just fascinated me to see this whole process unfold, and I would constantly do videos of sheets coming through the press, and it builds in form and color. It's amazing.
That press is about, I'm going to say, what, 80 or 90 feet long.
Yeah.
It would be from here to those tables, or
Yeah.
even longer.
And even longer, I think.
And it was Japanese-made press, so it's got some sort of Japanese culture built into it.
Uh-huh.
You remember if you were changing over the plates, the press would play Frere Jacques.
Yeah,
There's a couple other tunes it plays, but it warns you not to put your hand there.
Right.
Itsy Bitsy Spider was another one.
yeah, when I was waiting for the next press,
You could
it
hear
was
it.
like, oh, thank God,
It's getting
good
close.
soon will be seeing the next form.
So as I mentioned, there are also specialty inks, a couple of examples of using some gold ink.
Yeah, we used gold king fair amount. This was a beautiful John Edmonds project that we did in the last issue that we did, Esopus 25, and that was a fold-out poster, and the type around the edge is all a gold ink. Oh, that's great. Yeah, that's a piece from Esopus 7, I think. That's again just a gold background. It's also like a classic case of using dry fat, which you recommended. Which is basically when you dry trap varnish something, you run it through once without varnish. The ink's dry completely,
And then you varnish it.
and then you varnish it. It's like twice the varnish.
The idea is the varnish sits on top of the printed ink rather than absorbing into it.
And it really is striking. You can see in some of the issues, it's really amazing. Oh, so this is one of the great press operators applying this gold ink, which is very funny. Especially. But it's like cake icing, it's amazing.
Yeah.
These guys were probably really sick of me taking videos of it.
There are a lot of videos in the archive. I mean, I think one of the things that the show is really just a kickoff for the archive. And
Yeah.
so in the archive, there's a ton of videos that Tod took of various things. I didn't put any of the binding ones in there because that makes me really nervous because it looks like someone's going to chop off their fingers. But this one was
Isn't that beautiful?
nice.
It's just it's so luscious.
It looks like mustard.
It does, yeah. There he goes. Oh, that's the same.
That's the reading, yeah. You were just saying, Chris, about the toes. This is this is a John Baldassari project.
Project called Foot and Stocking Project, and it's I didn't know what it was. He said he submitted, well, the studio submitted all these images, and it turns out these are the big toes of all the studio assistants. And we did, not only was it all fluorescent PMS colors, Pantone colors, so you can see there the Pantone swatch book to check them, but it was also, again, dry trap varnish on the toenail, just so the toenail gets ripped.
Yeah.
Really nice.
In the show, you can see that, I guess the varnish proof and where the studio wrote if something was too jagged, which I just
Oh yeah, the
was
studio was very
hilarious.
picky. I'm picky too, but they were really picky. Not smooth enough.
That toenail is too jagged.
Yeah.
So we've talked a little bit about the exhibition catalog or the final issue of Esopus, the special edition that accompanies this show, and it's made up of a bunch of booklets, including the one that Gary and Gianluca produced, and one of them is on rejections. And I think Tod and I talked a little bit about like what are the things that we want in this publication that also relate to the making of Esopus, but also students and where this archive is now, and everybody has rejection, and so there's a terrific booklet in there with rejections from all kinds of luminaries that again Tod just sent an email out and people responded, but there's one from Matthew Weiner, and he says, let me see, actually
It's a great quote. He's the creator of Mad Men, the TV series.
So he talks about not having kept any rejections, but he says, I've come to realize rejection is now part of my process. I'm not used to it by any means, nor do I expect it, but it both sharpens my resolve that my ideas are new and also drives me to professionally outlive the resistance of the gatekeepers. If I wait patiently, they will either move on, reconsider, or become brave enough to try something new. Rejection, as painful as it is nothing more than a delay. And I love that. I also think it relates to your persistence again and tenacity. And so this, just a few slides here, a little bit of, again, kind of about creative thinking for different types of issues. And so maybe you could just talk a little bit about this Robert Gober piece, which is so kind of bizarre and wonderful, and it's also represented in the show.
Yeah, this was one that we took a break in publishing for like 6 months for a lot of reasons, but I approached Robert Gober, who's an amazing contemporary artist based in New York, and I've been after him for years trying to get him to do a project, and he kept demurring, but very sweetly and nicely, so I kept offering him. And we had this break, and I thought it would be so nice to do a little something, or a nice something for our subscribers to sort of tide them over until the next issue came. So I approached him, and he was available, and he said, yeah, I'd love to do something. And in each magazine is delivered in a folder, in a mailer that looks like that, it kind of folds in. And Bob decided to do his project on the inside of the mailer, which is really such a great idea. And these guys, once again, knocked it out of the park. I think how did you guys do
Well,
that?
we actually went to our box making company that we ordered just our generic cardboard boxes from, and we printed the sheets, and then they mounted it to the inside of the cardboard box, and then we die cut it. So I think the magic in it was that as a subscriber, we got this what we thought was an empty box,
Right.
only to open it up and have this beautiful print.
Many subscribers did think they got an empty box, because I got emails saying, "Look, where is the project?" You're looking at it.
And actually, in the show, we have on loan from Robert Gober the original work he created for Colby. And then, which issues is this episode?
8 to 11, 12.
12. I was thinking 2008, because it
Yeah,
was
right.
around the recession. And so, a lot of these, I would say these publications were not inexpensive to produce. I was really surprised about when the first issues how inexpensive they were priced.
Yeah.
And so obviously with the recession in 2008, one of Todd's way of thinking about how to save money was to turn it into a project, really, and to print this issue all just in black and white.
Yeah.
How did you go about selecting projects for that?
I mean, I think it was, there's certain artists like Charles Burnett that on the top left did this amazing film called Killer Sheep. It's in the National Film Registry. It's a black and white film. James Pine maybe did a project with a lot of really pictures of vinyl, works in black and white ink and only. There's a whole big Burn Porter thing for all you Mainers out there who are fans of his, a reproduction of one of his artist books, which was again in black and white. It was a very fun way to get very, very creative and really inventive about not only soliciting material, but then figuring out how to make it look really good. Because, again, this is kind of a particular thing, but, black ink generally, there's something called built black, which is usually a 4-color printing. If you have a black page or a black background, it's not just 100% black ink, it's 100% black ink and maybe 10% blue, 10% cyan, and 10% yellow, because it's richer. It's a much richer black. So we couldn't do that this time, right? Which was a little scary. But I think didn't we double hit some
I
of
want to
this?
say the front cover was run as 4-color black.
Maybe so.
But the interiors, there was some double hitting. It was
Yeah.
just one color.
Yeah, it was a challenge, but
I
it
mean,
was
what
really fun.
Yeah, what I love is that it was a limitation that
Yep.
you used to, resolve creatively, and that you don't feel like something's missing. Instead, it
No.
feels like this is
No.
a deliberate project.
Yeah.
But hopefully it lasts.
It costs a lot less.
So inserts. has a lot of inserts in the show. The kind of generally the top line and the exhibition is all posters and various inserts from Esopus, and a lot of inserts also on the shelf below. And these Esopus is chock full of them, and I hope you both can talk a little bit about what it means to include inserts from a creative standpoint, from a printing. There's a lot of really nice perforations, which are hard to get.
I mean, I think my decision was just that I wanted to feel like a bunch of things, and I wanted people to be surprised, and I wanted to feel like an adventure when you flip through an issue, like something would fall out into your lap. It could be a facsimile of a telegram from the MoMA archives that was printed. We were very careful about printing on both sides, so the inserts always looked exactly like the real thing.
Facsimile.
It was a total facsimile. It was always printed on paper that resembled the original document, and that involved, it's crazy, and I think about this kind of stuff, but that involved printing. When you print the back in front of something, the back is often just a scan of a very light, what you would see if you held it up to the light and see the type on the reverse. So you would have to design something with that image on the back that looks very faint, but then you have to match them, because on press, it has to back up perfectly. So there are tons of pictures I have of Preston like holding something up to check to make sure the type on the one side matches the type on the back. So yeah, I mean, the inserts were they were also a way for people to get art inexpensively. So a lot of the inserts were part of artist projects. So like the Baldassari project was perforated, so you could take it out and put it on the wall. People framed things. And it was it was meant to be a way to just make the whole process a little more accessible and democratic, I guess. And it was a huge challenge, not only for printing, but for post-printing.
The perforation and die cutting work, the precision that was required, where it was placed within the magazine, would it disrupt the flow of the magazine? All those things had to be thought of well in advance.
And you have this amazing team of family in Gilmore, and they did all of the insertions. So a lot of this was done after printing.
A lot of it was a manual assembly, where they were literally gluing together two pieces of paper in the most precise way. Over the course of a week or two, this group that we sometimes will outsource work to because they're just so good at what they do. It's an elderly lady. I would say she's probably in her early 80s, and her two grown-up sons. And that's all they do, is they do piecework for different manufacturers. So we're really lucky that they're still around and they do this type of work, because without them, yes, we probably could have done it, but the time it would have taken to do it just wouldn't have been possible in their time frame. So.
And they're so conscientious. They're like the best people to work with. Really terrific.
I think we got an email from wasn't it Gary Mitchell that has like some of the inserts framed in this hallway stairwell.
Yeah.
Who teaches here? Or used to teach. I want you to just talk about your favorite insert.
This is just complete obsession on my part, but I love making it feel like you have the object in your lap. And this was did anybody know who Rudy Valley is? Does that name strike anyone who's of a certain generation, right?
Yeah.
He was this cheesy, he was a singer, he was a joke teller, he was a comedian, he was a stand-up guy, entertainer, and he had a joke book, and my friend Michael Rohatton somehow got it. We used to do these things, it was called Found Object, and if somebody would find something at a thrift shop, and it was this amazing treasure, and this was one of these things, like this Rudy Valley's joke book, and the jokes were terrible, and really awful. But the pages were held together with these little gummed reinforcements, which are the things you put around a hole to make sure it doesn't tear out. And I became obsessed because it was missing from that one there. I thought this would be so great if you could just get one gum reinforcement and throw it in the magazine in that spot in the gutter, because then when people open it, they're going to be like, oh my God, I can't believe it. How did that happen? I started searching for them, but the problem is gum reinforcements, they stopped making them in like 1970.
You're scouring eBay.
I was on eBay, and this was early on, so it wasn't like, now it's like a Google search can usually yield something like that, but it was The biggest cache I found was at an elementary school about 200 yards from the Esopus Creek. And I just went to every elementary school I could find and said, "Do you have any gum? I'll buy you regular ones." And they had like 600 or something. So again, insane, but very fun to do.
And imagine Alfond Magazine is bound. Somebody
right.
at our shop literally had to go and find page 174
Right.
and put this thing into the gutter,
Right.
one at a time.
Right. It's insane. It's insane. It's insane. Kelly said it best. I'm crazy.
There's another one. This is from the Modern Artifacts series that was Tod did with the Museum of Modern Art and their archive there, where you'll see earlier there was a piece too, reproductions of particular folders in their archive, produced almost exactly. And this is one of my favorites actually. It's some correspondence between the artist James Lee Byers and the MoMA curator Dorothy Miller, and they had a bunch of correspondence, and one piece is this envelope that's in the show, and inside the envelope, for the magazine, it's in this plastic sleeve, but there's just the tiniest little question mark. It's like an 1/8 inch by 1/8 inch square
it's tiny.
with a question mark on it. So someone would get that, like she got it ostensibly,
Right.
and was like, "What's in here? Is anything in here?" And just a little tiny question mark falls out of it, which I think is both just like a romantic gesture, and I don't know, I love it so much. And Tod, there's actually a picture with you or with your family
Yeah, my
cutting
parents.
out. Cutting out.
They were selecting the goods and the okays
Yeah.
because it was so hard to cut them at that size. So we had to do 8,000 of them.
Oh God.
So it was like, and we did them by hand. I did it by hand.
Yeah.
So it was a very long process. And they would never. There were only like one of every 5 was really good. Again.
I feel like this became a mantra for the show too. Good, okay.
Right.
Good, okay. I don't know. I love these stars. They're also in the archive. Mock-ups. I think we have a little bit more time. So mock-ups, I think that Tod and I'm sure Chris to some extent, I love mock-ups. I think they're such an important part of any process. We do it all the time with our exhibitions to see how something is working. You know, you look at it on your screen for so long, and it's really important to make something physical. It's going to be physical. And so Tod shares that love of mock-ups. There's a case in the show that is just a small selection of the many, many that you made. Most of them are kind of crude, like not 8.5 by 11 sheets of paper, trying to figure out how something folds, or some are made by the artists themselves. And there's also, for Esopus 1, a mock-up, which is really, it's a full-size one that was really proof of concept.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. A way to sell it to, distributors, etc.
Yeah.
Yeah, mock-ups they're really, really, really fun to do, and they're not only fun, they help me figure out whether the magazine is going to work or not, as you said. But I do something. I was open flats, but there's probably a better name for it. But those things I would send when I'd send the files for the issue, I'd send a complete.
Oh, like the page map.
Yes, it was a page map, but then it was also like a printout of every spread with every insert taped in and labeled. And it became like the Bible. Like it was how you guys, especially when the issue had been printed and you were.
When you're doing complex work like this, I couldn't even imagine not having some sort of a mock-up to follow, because we figure it out, but it's way easier for us to be able to understand exactly what you're hoping to achieve with each and every project. So without those, I don't know even how we would pull it off, to be honest.
I remember we did that, or Gary and Gianluca made a mock-up of their of their piece in the special edition. You had to just figure out, how does it fold? Who starts where? How many pages? How does that work? And Tod, of course, made a mock-up of the special issue. So he continued to do it as a way to bring it up and share it with us, and only cut his finger once. We also make mock-ups of models of our shows. This is my son Henry, who's here, who's very excited to see himself on screen. This is down in our offices, and my husband built the model actually, of the Davis Gallery, and it's really just such a tool for communication to figure out how is this going to come together. I was actually really surprised when we were putting the show together, and it really felt like the model. It was just like, here it is, except we used pink paper instead of yellow, and we even used it as a tool when we were in the gallery doing the layout. I would kind of hold the model and look at the wall and think like, is this working? Is this too much? It was a lot. And then, kind of finally, I just wanted to say, I think one of the really important parts of the making of Esopus, obviously the artworks and the artists are critical to the process. In the show, you'll also see there's a wall of fame, I think we call it, or something like that. That is a lot of fan mail that Tod receives. So there are the readers and the fans. There's also a case with some letters from other terrific people. And then there's also the printer, which includes a lot of photos from the people that Chris works really closely with and that Tod worked really closely with, because truly you couldn't make this magazine without this whole team. And so this is also in the show, and I hope that you all can check it out. And then importantly, because this is also about the making of the exhibition, and Tod documents everything. There are many people here that made this exhibition come to life. Many that are featured, including Young here, our intern from Special Collections, that then has worked with the museum for a year, truly knows the archive better than anybody, I think. Our installations crew that, as we make every decision that we make. There's also the hammock that you can see there is, we commissioned that for the show. That came about actually from a conversation with Beth Finch, our head curator. One day we were looking at the model and I was talking to her about what we should do in the Nook, and she's like, maybe it just needs a hammock. And we were both really tired. We were just so tired that day, I think, and it just seemed so nice. And then, I think in our minds we were like, yeah. Well, at first I was like, I'm not sure. And then I was like, yeah, I'm tired too. We could do a hammock. And then I talked to Tod, and I think we thought like, oh, we'll go to LLB, buy a hammock or something. And then Tod was like, I don't know, hammock. And then maybe 2 minutes later, he's like, what if we commission a hammock? And so then we worked with Paulo Arroyo, who was in issue 24, I think, and he worked with Gregory Besson to create what I think is a really wonderful piece, because so many things in the show are interactive and you can touch them and you can even hang out in the hammock. So this is just a few of the many, many people that worked on the making of the show. I wanted to make sure to thank.
And there are a couple of contributors here tonight, and all of them made efforts to be here, including Alice Marver in the front row, who did a track for our organs CD in our medicine issue. And Bob Guest is here, right in the third row. Wave your hand. There we go. So Bob did these amazing, often you find out, I have friends who say, you should check this out, this is really cool. Bob wrote letters, there are a bunch in the exhibition, I would urge you all to check them out. He wrote notes to each of his kids. His daughter Joanne is here too, who's one of the recipients of the notes, every day from the time they were in kindergarten until the time they graduated from high school. And these notes are not having a day, these notes are like deep reflections on the meaning of life and the meaning of growing up. And they're just extraordinary. And they were one of my favorite things we ever did in the issue. So check him out and talk about it. Congratulate him on his incredible fathering skills, parenting skills. And I know this, I feel like, well, Kerry, our administrator, is here with her husband Scott. Kerry's been with Esopus for, 18 years, 16 years? Yeah. Please, if I'm missing anybody, raise your hands. Well, Kelly was a contributor. Kelly, the guard here, did an amazing Garden Opinions, part of a series that we've done for years, asking the museum artists to talk about the work they oversee. And she did one for this exhibition, which is great. Gary obviously contributed to this issue. So thank all of you folks for being here, as well as everybody from the museum. and the college who've made this such an incredibly, it's like doing an issue and taking an issue to the printer. Suddenly it's in the hands of people who can do something much better than you can, and it's just this kind of incredible joy to watch, and the biggest gratitude goes to you, Megan. You did such an incredible job with this exhibition.
Which is because I'm staring at this hat. But Tod, I think he even write about, we talked about it in our conversation in the catalog, but Tod talks about how, you know, the magazine ran for 15 years and 25 issues, and when the library acquired it, he talked about it like, oh, my baby's going to college, like off to college, so
this is my present.
We got him a Colby dad hat.
So questions, please. Oh, there we go.
Hi, this has been a wonderful conversation. Thank you. Tod, I'd like to know who you thought was going to be a subscriber as you envisioned the magazine, and who your actual subscribers turned out to be.
Wow, that's a great question. I think that, you know, I think if you think too hard about who you're making something for, you can get tripped up in making it. I think I think I had a general notion of somebody who maybe was a little bit in the world that I was in, but hopefully not so much in that world, but it ended up being kind of a specific audience. I didn't want it to be just art people. I didn't want it to be just designers. I wanted to reach a general audience, and that was happening slowly with the first two issues, but then we got a big piece in the New York Times right before the third issue came out, and that really, we had subscribers at every stage for a little art magazine. That was kind of amazing. And speaking of subscribers, I never would have imagined having that issue. You know, when the New York Times says something is worth checking out, it's like a cult. It's like a very short-lived cult, and we had, you know, Francis Ford Coppola subscribed, and the best was that Martha Stewart subscribed. She was in jail at the time. I was sent into her prison cell.
Do you have to remove any certain names?
I'm sure they removed her before she got there. Oh yeah, sure. So one of the things that we tried for years to do was to get these issues into the hands of like public libraries, community libraries, prison libraries, public school libraries, etc. And we would denote, like, I think each issue was usually 10% of the print run went to an amazing organization called Distribution of Underserved Communities, and they just literally take art, books, and magazines and distribute it to underserved libraries. And lately, since we've stopped publishing the magazine, we've created this program, which is just literally a library donation program, and people give $250 to the foundation, which is essentially the cost of a set of all the available issues, and tell us where they want to be donated. We will donate them, send them to that institution. We've done maybe 40 or 50 sets in the last year, so that's, to me, that's the best of the best. And we've gotten some really amazing responses from students, and I often speak at the schools then and talk about the issues. So that's really important. At this point, that's really the most important thing we're doing. So thank you. Yes.
When a new issue of Esopus comes on the to-do list at your state press, is everyone excited or threatened?
Answer honestly.
I would say everybody's quite excited, and they love Tod. He's always a great addition. We put a lot of careful planning into each and every issue, so yeah, the answer is we were excited to do it, but also a little bit nervous because there's so many different twists and turns with each and every issue that you just never know what might kind of go awry. And there's just a lot of moving parts, so it's a real challenge for us. But as I said earlier, it's definitely made us, much better as a printing company, and very confident that we can do just about anything. So.
But Chris would never say no. Like he would never ever. I mean, there were things that I'm sure you know this too. It's like you're things that like I'm going to throw this at you and see what you do, and you say, "Well, this is great. I love what it has to say." You get so excited about it, and then you're like, "We can't do it this way, but I think we can do it if we use this kind of stock, or if we, change the grain of the paper or whatever." There were all these like crazy, but I never ever felt like you were not a no person. You were always like, yeah, let's give it a shot. Let's see if we can make it work. So,
it makes the day go by quicker.
fair enough.
Also, Tod doesn't take no.
Yeah. Just use as much as it is.
We have time for one or two more questions.
In the issues? Yeah, well, I mean, you could argue that it's all art on some level, but like Bob's piece is not, they weren't drawings that were meant to be displayed in the gallery. They were notes with beautiful illustrations, by the way, and handwriting written to his kid, that I think, and kids, and I don't think you ever thought they would end up in a museum wall, which again makes them so much more interesting, right? Because they're so much authenticity and so much feeling in them. And we did, there was a guy who did little abstract pen and ink drawings on Post-it notes. He was a night manager for Crate and Barrel. He was a friend of a friend of a friend. And they were beautiful. They were really amazing. And so hopefully like every issue or every other issue had something that just wasn't art, but in some ways was as arty as anything that would be defined naturally as well.
And also, as you noted, music and film and writing, and so it was really interdisciplinary, which I think is an important part of it here at Colby.
Yeah. Well, the idea was like if somebody was into indie, like alternative music, and we had a track by Grizzly Bear on the CD, they would get the issue for that, but then they would see work by, Ed Boucher, or Kerry James Marshall, or a great writer, or, a filmmaker, and it would hopefully make it easier to broaden their perspective on all the arts, which is one.
And also, we didn't talk about this, but the invitational, so also readers became contributors
Yep.
to the magazine, which I found, again, to your kind of democratic view of art and the magazine, an important part.
Yeah, it was very fun to have readers contribute various things. Yep.
It occurs to me now listening to you all. First of all, Megan, congratulations on you saw the lovely stages. It was just always so spirited.
Me too.
I'm just going to keep it. Congratulations. It was a beautiful show. And so I wondered, just listening to you guys, and this is really like what you're talking about now, I wondered if you ever thought of it as like a data kind of project or surrealistic kind of considering anything, representing it in a new way, in a fresh way, kind of makes it seem like you're strong, would have done it if you could have.
Oh, that's enough. Okay. That's enough. We can stop the question. I think we always knew. Again, I'm quoting Kelly the guard right above, but she said it's chaos in there, and it really is. But it's very well managed, and thanks again, listening to Megan's vision. It is like you play with it. You're supposed to be interact with all the stuff. There are pieces of paper pinned to the wall, but I think the idea was just not to do another. I saw an exhibition recently, a beautiful exhibition of zines in Brooklyn, an amazing, comprehensive display of every artist produced zine for the last 30 years. And it was a beautiful show, but everything was under glass. And it was really frustrating. I mean, these are valuable things, so you can't, obviously people can't fall through them, but what I loved so much about this was that it was just, I think your feeling earlier on was that things had to be accessible, just as we wanted things to be accessible in the magazine.
Yeah, and Juliet's not here tonight, but she, actually the title, A Lot More Inside, came from her as we were looking through some rejected covers, which actually is now the cover of the special issue. Was A Lot More Inside, and there were definitely, well, one, you should know that the Nevelson show that is in the Upper and Lower Jetty is called The World Outside, and we've got A Lot More Inside, which was, I think Jillian was like, that's so funny that you guys did that. And I was like, Beth, what did we do? This is okay. But also, there were definitely moments, especially in the installation, where it was like, is this too much? Is this, like, what's happening? Is it okay? And but really, yeah, but really, it needed it. You need, it's the whole that makes the story, and not any individual piece, but all of it together.
Thank you. So before we thank our amazing panelists for the night, I wanted to tell you that we have refreshments so we can all celebrate this amazing event and this amazing exhibition together. And the gallery will be open until 8. So thank you and enjoy.
And thank you, Julian, for organizing that.